Well, welcome everybody from across the globe to FlightGlobal's third in our series of 4 webinars this year, focused on the crucial topic of aviation sustainability. And the first 2 are available to watch on the FlightGlobal.com website now at your leisure, and this one will be in a few days. Now, today we're focusing on business aviation, and we're going to be talking about, is there a sustainable future for business aviation? Of course, the answer is yes, but what is it? How's it going to be shaped? My name is Mark Pilling, and I'm a contributing editor at FlightGlobal. And we're partnering on this webinar today and this year with Pratt & Whitney. But today it's the Pratt & Whitney Canada arm of this engine major that will be in the spotlight. Welcome to you. Now, we also welcome questions from our audience, so please post them, as usual, if you've been on Zooms before, on the Q&A icon at the bottom, not the chat. So for some reason, Q&A does it. We'll manage that, and we'll try and answer as many as we can as we go along and at the end. Now to the important people, the experts, our expert panel. I'm delighted to welcome 5 people who represent aviation enterprises that are committed, that are innovating and delivering a sustainable future for business aviation. I'm delighted that we've got Scott McElvain. He's a VP, Business Development and Commercial Services at Pratt & Whitney Canada. Welcome, Scott. He's been with the firm for 26 years in a variety of posts right through the engine portfolio. We've also got Marty Kretschmann. He's the Senior Vice President of Operations Planning at Signature Flight Support. He's on the executive team there. Signature is one of the world's largest fixed-based operators. It's got a global network and is now private equity owned. And Marty will talk about what that means perhaps to his business as we go through. Delighted also that we've got Bruce Parry with us. Bruce is the Senior Advisor Industry Affairs at Bombardier, and now he recently rejoined Bombardier after a 6-year spell with the European Business Aviation Association. So he's got 2 skill sets to bring today. Welcome, Bruce. We've also got Stanley Bagasia. He's the Managing Director of DC Aviation Malta, one of Europe's largest business aviation operators and managers of business aircraft. And we're delighted to have you, Stanley. Thank you for joining. And last, just on this list, we've got Simon Gear, who's the Chief Executive of Farnborough Airport. He's he's the Chief Executive for, I think, 2 years and a bit of, one of Europe's premier business aviation airports, and one of the very few with SAF available to pump today. Simon, welcome. Great to have you on. And what a great panel. We really are trying to get the whole industry represented here. Just as a bit of preamble, focus today, business aviation. Of course, it's no different to any other sector in our industry, embracing the challenge of delivering a sustainable future with that net zero or zero emission CO2 targets by 2050 or earlier. But of course, this sector has a different challenge to fixed wing or rotary. The larger airline cousins, the aviation cousins, it's got a different challenge, mainly because of its size. And its share of emissions are tiny in comparison. If aviation is about 3% of global CO2, let's put non-CO2 to one side for a minute, business aviation is only 2 to 3% of that, making it 0.0 something, 4, whatever, of total global CO2. And the irregular nature of business flying makes carbon reduction plans different by design compared to, say, airlines. So it's a different challenge. And also, let's face it, this sector can also struggle sometimes with image, the old cliche of, the rich zooming around in private jets. Now, of course, it's much, much more than that, but it is sometimes an issue. So let's explore the future. Let's get with our experts. Let's start with technology. And I'm going to start with Scott. In a previous webinar, we heard from his colleague, Michael Winter at Pratt & Whitney Mainline about the company's sustainability roadmap, primarily pointing towards commercial jetliners. But Scott, the roadmap for business aviation, what is it as you see it? Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me, Mark. And good morning, good afternoon to my colleagues and to everybody on the phone. Well, I heard your opening there about where business aviation fits into what we need to do, but I think we all recognize the need for us to act urgently as a community. And we certainly, as an engine manufacturer, we are very cognizant of the impact that our products and the use of them have on the marketplace. And it's kind of for this reason that, we came out with the motto that you kind of see on the screen there, the smarter, cleaner, greener. And it's important for us to make sure that we invest on the technologies of the future as we look to carbon neutrality. But I think it's also equally important for us and for our community to focus on the now as well as the future. I think everybody seems to get pretty wrapped up by some of the exciting developments that are going on out there. But at the same time, aircraft are flying each and every day today, and we need to be focused on those now. So we look to new technologies. Certainly, there's a lot of practicality in hybrid structures, hybrid electric type power plants, which is why we've launched demonstrations in that particular domain. Some of you might have heard about our hybrid electric demonstrator on Dash 8 that we're doing for regional. Some of the work that we're doing on hydrogen. We also recently announced a Step Tech, which is another hybrid electric demonstrator, a little bit lower down than the first one I was talking about. But also a lot of work on sustainable aviation fuel, which is more focused on the present. But more important than that, we also have been spent many years focused on the products of today, which represent major changes, step changes from previous generation, and that's all about the now. And I know I'm thinking about products like the PW800, which have double-digit improvements, kind of like across the board: fuel burn, emissions, noise, the whole gamut. And then we're really focused on our operations, because it's not just about the products; it's also about our factories and our footprint, and making sure that we make best use of the planet's resources. So with year-over-year reductions and reductions targets as we try and head towards carbon neutrality. But I think the most important point that I would like to give to you, Mark, is in all this, there's a strong need for collaboration, whether or not you talk about the products of today and getting maximum use out of the benefits that they do have, either from an operation or maximizing the use of sustainable aviation fuels. Our products are able to use up to 50% blends today, and I don't think that's being well utilized by the BizAv marketplace as we speak, or as we talk to new technologies, and working with our airframe colleagues to make sure that we find place for those new technologies. And how would hybrid electric work within a business aviation environment is very much a roadmap to come as we move in the steps that we need to evolve towards not just sustainable, but also safe and reliable flight.
So Scott, let's just I'm going to ask Bruce to jump in, but let's just pick up on that. In business aviation, is the work that's going on into hybrid, into all electric, into hydrogen, is that applicable right across the Pratt & Whitney range? Is it applicable to business aviation? Scott, I'm going to ask you, that is for you.
Sorry, I thought you were throwing that at Bruce.
I was going to throw that to Bruce in a sec, but I was going to check with you, because is all that work that Pratt's doing, is that applicable? Is that going to make its way into these types at some point, of course?
Absolutely. The way the market or the way the technology is developing, it definitely is going to start in shorter range type products, 100 nautical miles, 150 nautical mile, slower moving, lower altitude. And when you think about biz jets, which tend to fly at higher altitude, faster speeds, at the upper end, we're talking about Mach 0.9, 50,000 foot kind of speeds. The technologies will get there, but they need to start at a place which is practical, achievable, such that the technologies can mature and grow. And when you think about hybrid electric type products, particularly battery capacity is a very important technology that needs to be matured as part of that roadmap. We're all working as aggressively as we can in order to mature those. But I think the key point is that it needs to be also done in a way which meets customers' expectations of today, be it economic, be it safety, be it reliability. All those measures need to be met, which means that it's going to take, and it's something that everybody in the industry is doing, is investing the effort to make sure that we move the needle, but in a way which is sustainable, and in all the measures where it's sustainable.
No, thank you, Scott. Thanks for elaborating on that. So, Bruce, let's jump in here with you. I mean, Bombardier is amongst the leaders in this area. You're vocal in this area. So, the perspective of an aircraft maker, what's the roadmap for business aircraft look like to you at Bombardier?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. It's a really good question, and hello everybody, wherever you are and wherever you're tuning in. I mean, yes, from a Bombardier perspective, it's we're looking at different things. But most recently at eBase, we launched our EcoJet research program, which is going to look into the very things that Scott was talking about a moment ago. So, which is the practical propulsion systems, the configuration of the aircraft, is it as a blended wing body, and so on and so forth, so that these things reduce emissions that we understand we need to reduce through the business aviation commitment on climate change. So, and the internal ESG program of Bombardier is also pushing this. So we have internal pressure, we have external pressure as well as to what we need to do to what we need to do to improve. What we need to understand, though, of course, is these things won't happen tomorrow. We need to make sure that the technology used is mature, it's a technology readiness level where it can be used on the aircraft, and so on and so forth. So this research platform is doing just that. The EcoJet itself isn't a program, but is a research. But what will happen, of course, is that as technology matures, it will appear on Bombardier aircraft in the future. And at some point, we may see a blended wing body that reflects, the technology that's available. But it's research for now, so that we can understand where the gains are and what we'll be able to achieve, and we'll be able to then focus on those things that will give us the best bang for the buck and reduce the emissions, considerably. But in the meantime, of course, we've got those technologies that are coming through with SAF, as we know, is a very big contributor. Engine improvements year on year, and so on and so forth. So we have the short-term measures, we have the medium and long-term measures as well.
Thank you, Bruce. And I can appreciate here, because obviously what I'm trying to do as a journalist is trying to squeeze you and sort of say, well, what is happening? What do you see the aircraft of the future being? And I think we're talking, when we talk about roadmaps, we're still talking quite a long way out on those horizons, on those roadmaps, because the technology isn't there, and it won't be for some time. But I will ask Stanley here, actually, as you've listened to this, you've seen perhaps the EcoJet at eBase, and I'm sure there'll be more announcements at MBAA in a couple of months. But Stanley, you're an aircraft operator. Does this sound like I just said, very far away in terms of having such an aircraft in operation? What do you think about when you look at that today?
Thanks, Mark, and I'm glad to be here, and hello to all the audience. Yes, I think from an aircraft operator perspective, it feels, and obviously I'm not an engineer, but it feels it's still a long way from where we are, a long way from today, before we're operating electric or hydrogen powered aircraft. Definitely, as Scott said, you need to start somewhere to get there. So it does make sense to to start with the smaller aircraft. We're in fact, as an operator, DC Aviation is collaborating with a company in the US which is working on producing up to 1,000 megawatt engine, starting with 250 megawatt, growing up to 1,000 megawatt engine, driven by hydrogen powered. So it won't really serve.
Who are you working with, Stanley? Come on, you can't just give us that. It's like you give me half a story.
We're working with Hydroplane, Dr. Anita Sengupta. It won't fit our needs, but in the immediate, right? Even once that is developed. But in order to get to where we want to be, where we're operating aircraft which are carbon neutral, if you like, we need to work on these younger technologies, if you like, so that the technology eventually evolves to there. But if you tell me, I guess
it's all about, I like it, Stanley. You're experimenting. You're helping with that experiment process by bringing the operator's perspective to the party. Is that important here?
I think so. I think I think the easiest thing to do would be to say, yeah, well, it's not my problem. I just operate what they give me. But I think I don't think it's the right approach. All of us, there's a lot we can do. And again, as Scott said and Bruce said, if we work together, we'll get there sooner. At the moment, I think we're still a little bit far. I don't think it's something which is going to happen in a year or two, a little bit longer than that. But if more people support the research and development, even though you're not necessarily a manufacturer of an engine or an airframe, the sooner we get there. I think it's our responsibility as being part of the industry.
Yeah. No, well said, Stanley. Excellent. And this is part of this debate, especially in this part of the industry. Yes, so Stanley's helping Hydroplane, working with Hydroplane, trying to understand what's going on. Let's look at what Signature's doing, because let's talk about the here and now aspect, especially with you, Marty. You're going to be working with these types of aircraft as we go on, but of course, the massive majority of your work is going to be with conventional types. Sustainability really came under your wing in 2019 when we were talking about before this webinar, and your business has gone large on SAF. Just tell us why and how are you doing it?
Well, I'll pick up on a point Scott made. So, thinking about the long-term sustainability profile of our industry, we are very interested in emerging technologies. We're working with eVTOL operators. I love to hear, Stanley and others talking about, hey, what would the future of power plants look like in this space? Because that's always been the evolution of aviation, right? You went from piston to jets to turbofans, and that's always the quantum leaps as power plants. So it makes sense that we work there. But the point that Scott was making is, what can we do today, right? We need to take action today. The reality is most projections over the next 30 years, a little less now, to our 2050 industry goals of carbon neutral or net zero, I guess. It's going to require innovation around the fuels, right? Because the aircraft, the energy density of fuel right now is still 10-to-1 off the most innovative battery technology. So the long haul operations, which burn most of the fuel, will continue to be off jet fuel. So Signature made a determination of sort of that path. And we wanted to see, as the #1 provider of fuel to general aviation globally, with a footprint that touches 70% of the world's business aviation jets on an annual basis, how could we contribute to sustainability today? And we see SAF as that immediate opportunity. Now, the supply demand is a bit of a challenge right now. Trying to compete with the airlines, it's good competition, but obviously general aviation is a little bit behind some of the airline offtake commitments. So we're working hard to advance our position there and make sure that we'll have the fuel available. When we look across the demand profile, we've had some great announced partnerships with Bombardier, who's on the call here. NetJets has been a very early adopter We took our world's first ever 100% SAF FBO. We converted San Francisco International Airport 2 years ago to 100% sustainable aviation fuel. And now we have 17 locations, including the entire state of California, that have permanent SAF supply. So we're determined to make this available to our customers, because if it's not available, they can't buy it. From there, though, we've hit on this, and I've heard a couple of my co-panelists here, the idea of education. And then I actually saw a question from Chef Syed in the Q&A about the pricing of SAF, right? And there still is a disparity. So if I'm an operator that operates my aircraft for profit, spending more on the fuel that I put in is a challenge, right? Unless I can get my customers to be willing to pay that. So fleet operators and OEMs have been willing to invest and take a leadership position. The next opportunity is, how do we create some price parity between conventional SAF? I do think things like in the US, if anyone's followed the news the last few weeks, there was something passed called the Inflation Reduction Act, had some pretty substantial SAF provisions in it. That will help drive down the cost of a blended gallon, probably only 10 or 15 cents. And you're still looking at, call it $1.25 to $1.50 per gallon price disparity. So it's not a huge price change, but what it does do is it increases the incentive for producers relative to competing products like renewable diesel. So that creates more parity in the production space. And I think that type of legislation and ultimately government support, subsidy, is going to be key to accelerating this adoption as well. So we're very much working with our partners to try to stay on the cutting edge there. I think the key is it takes all of us. As big as Signature is, or Pratt, or Bombardier, or some of these others, none of us can do it ourselves. So I think the fact that we're all, getting on forums like this, talking about how we can collaborate to help our industry towards a more sustainable future is good for all of us.
Lots of great themes there, Martin. We'll pick up on some of those. So thank you for that. And we'll pick up on some of those as we go through the discussion. I'm going to bring Simon. I'm going to ask Simon to come in here, please. Just like Signature, obviously from the point of view of a business of an airport, you're taking a leading position. Just tell us what you're doing and also why, Simon.
Yeah, maybe just to give a little bit of context, UK context. Farnborough Airport is on the front line of concerns around climate change. Being the largest business aviation airport in the UK, we get a lot of interaction with various interest groups, and it is a real concern. I know we all know that, but I'm just making the point. We see it on a monthly basis. That people want change in our industry. And we need to bring about that change. And that's why I probably spend more than 50% of my time looking at sustainability initiatives or collaborations that can really make a difference. But being someone that's come from actually the commercial airport world as opposed to business aviation, one of my observations is the sector is incredibly fragmented. We've got thousands of different aircraft tails coming into Farnborough, hundreds of different aircraft types, many different operators, and many more again, ultimate owners. And galvanizing decision-making is one of the biggest challenges that we have. We ran a trial recently where we equalized the price of SAF and Jet A1 to see how that would impact demand. And it did impact. We had a bigger uptake. In fact, we sold 10 times more SAF than we'd sold in the whole of the year, but we've obviously got supply constraints. But the point I wanted to make was actually those operators that didn't take SAF, even when the price was equalized, didn't understand the specification, hadn't done the research, couldn't make the decision. And I think that's a real challenge for us, that collectively as an industry, we have to come together. Look at the commercial airline airport world. There are fewer airlines, there are fewer airports. I mean, we serve over 800 international airports just from Farnborough alone. So think worldwide for business aviation. How do you get everybody together to make a concerted effort and make a real difference? And that's really why Farnborough Airport is putting itself out there. And it wants to be a global showcase for airport sustainability. That's what we say, because that's our future.
We'll come on to some of those specifics, but I'm just okay, Marty. Just do you recognise that Simon? Thank you. That's a really great points there, Marty. Do you recognise? And I'll ask Stanley second. Do you recognise that customer? The comments that Simon was making about, are customers really ready here, or that awareness piece, and how we get over that or get through it.
Yeah, I think, Simon, it's a great point. No, we've seen it as well, Simon. There's still a less now than maybe a few years ago, but there still is a gap in, I call it operator education, right? I'm a pilot myself, and you're taught very early to treat, the fuel you put in your aircraft as sacred. You do your own checks. You want to know who would put it in, where it came from, what it is. And SAF, I think, has been sort of touted as this new, different product, right, to the industry. Like, well, it's new, it's special. SAF is jet fuel. I don't think we've done a great job as an industry making it clear. It meets the exact same end user specifications as jet fuel. For us, we commingle it with our pure conventional supply, right? And that's been done for many years by the airlines and consortiums all over the world. And so I think Simon hits that key point. We as an industry need to do a better job of educating our customers that SAF is jet fuel. It is safe to use as blended today. There's a max specification of 50% sustainable fuel per gallon sold today. Now, a couple of the operators on here, Bombardier and Pratt & Whitney, have been testing 100% SAF blends, and I do think eventually we'll get there. But as it exists today, the SAF that's available commercially to general aviation is safe in every single aircraft that's flying today because it is per specification identical to jet fuel. And I do think that is a gap in some of the adoption, hopefully one we're starting to close.
If I could
Scott,
add to that.
well, let's get Scott to come on, then I'll ask Stanley what he sees from his customers and also as a customer himself.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, Marty, I think that's a really great point about education. I'll repeat what I said at the beginning, which is, our engines today are capable of using blends up to 50%, and the engine is absolutely agnostic to that. And we're doing a lot of test work on 100% blends. You hear about the demonstration flights that are going on, and really, that the only difference to get from a 50% to 100% is a matter of having the right specifications in place and working with governments and regulators just to understand what that means ultimately. And that's only a handful of years away. That's not that far away. And yet, from an industry, the uptake on use of blends, 70-30 blends, which far below what the majority of engines can already accept and aircraft can accept. It's not there. And, and if you look at a supply viewpoint as well, in 2019, out of 95 billion gallons of jet fuel, 0.1% was SAF or SAF blends. From our understanding, you look at 2025, it'll be 2%, and 2030, 5%. So there is definitely room for a lot of collaboration, as Marty rightfully pointed out, for us to move the needle in the short term through that collaboration, education, working the demand side, and then working with the governments to make sure that the supply side comes together in a way which is affordable.
Mm. Bruce, did you want to come in here, or I'll ask Stan?
Yeah, I'm really interested by the comments that Simon made about education and with what Marty said and everything else. The business aviation community has had a SAF coalition for the last 3 or 4 years, where we've we've tried to do that very thing and educate much better. So and I believe that we do have signature as part of that as well. So I would invite Simon to I'll reach out to Simon separately about the coalition and everything else, because I think the education process continues. It doesn't happen for a certain amount of time and then stop. We cover a very, very large part of the world and so on, and we have many airports. So the reach is very, very very, very challenging from that point of view. So we need to make sure that we get out to those airports and everything. So Simon, yes, that's a really good point, and thank you for making it.
And it's really, that's my point around how fragmented the sector is on a relative basis. That whole communication piece is a massive challenge. And And it's, you know, take for Farnborough, for example, you know, 30% of our business, we've got managed operators here, you know, so they don't own the aircraft. There's an ultimate owner somewhere behind the scenes. They're the ones that we're making the decision around whether to uptake SAF or not. And those are the people we need to get to in terms of the educational piece. And you know, certainly when we did our trial, there was clear evidence that people just hadn't even considered uptaking SAF, you know, even though it's, you know, we've had it since last year. Yes, there's a price premium, but no one was seriously looking at it. And so we've got a lot of work to do in that regard.
Thank you, Simon. I'm going to ask you to come in here, Stanley, because I mean, when I listen to this, I sort of think, well, you know, we all get SAF, you know, everybody must want it. It's an availability problem. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe there are people who just go, well, actually, until I'm forced to do it, you know, yeah, the environment's important, but, you know, I've just got to operate tomorrow's flight or today's flight. You know, let's worry about it another day. Stanley, what's your thinking? What have you seen?
Of operating an aircraft is a complicated thing, especially, I mean, unlike the airlines, exactly like Simon said, and it's managed aircraft. So within a fleet, so we've got in excess of 30 aircraft in our organization. They're different owners. So somebody may be conscious of the environment, somebody less conscious, somebody would be aware of SAF, some not. Again, it might not be very popular what I'm about to say, but we're living in a very cost-conscious world, and I understand it's a bit of a chicken and egg. So if the demand increases, so would probably the supply, and so would the price eventually go down. But there are so many struggles from an operator perspective when you're operating an aircraft, and you know, you get owners simply calling you, why are you using that FBO and not the other, because this one is 50 euros cheaper. On the other hand, Mark, we discussed this when, you know, before when you asked me to join the panel. I was pleasantly surprised that a number of owners, when you explain to them, they're willing to explore and, you know, so how is it going to impact my cost at the end of the month, and you know, and when you give them the whole argument of why they should, you know, consider this, there is an uptake, but I think, unfortunately, and again, maybe it's not very popular what I'm about to say, but the general consensus, if you like, is that SAF is not available everywhere. You know, as Simon said, you know, we service 600 airports. I mean, from Farnborough to 600 or 800 airports. Farnborough is probably one of 10 that in the business aviation sphere that you can get SAF from. So for a lot of operators, and especially the even smaller ones, where you know, the organization is even smaller, they go, okay, well, when it becomes compulsory or when it becomes available everywhere, then I deal with it. And most people won't even know whether they can take 50%, 100%, or so it is a bit. It's not from an operator perspective. It's not a simple argument of, does my engine, is my engine okay with it? Is SAF there? It's price. It's a lot of things. It's a lot of moving parts, and exactly like Simon said, it's very fragmented within the industry. But then from an operator, we have another series of constraints that we have to deal with.
Thank you, Stanley. Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that perspective. I mean, this is, you know, we're sort of going from the macro to the sort of the, you know, the operators that Stanley's dealing with. I mean, but there are people who are sort of, and we've got two of them here. And let's explore a little bit about, you know, what Marty's doing with Signature. I mean, you know, you've got 17 airports today with permanent supplies of SAF, Marty. Is that and just describe your thinking as to how you're going to expand that? Because you're bringing it, it's available, it's there now.
Yeah, Stanley, by the way, I just want to, Stanley, I appreciate your honesty. Sometimes the truth hurts, though. You're right. And that parity, paying a premium per gallon, we absolutely understand that. And I think that's where this sort of chicken and egg work to try to increase the supply is key to bring the price point down and at least move that barrier. So we're determined there. Part of it is expanding where we have physical supply, but I think everyone who's probably tuned into this, and certainly this panel, appreciates, putting it on trucks from, say, the West Coast of the United States where it's produced, and driving it on non-renewable diesel all the way to, say, Teterboro, to our operations there, isn't very responsible from an overall carbon intensity perspective. So we're very focused on two things. One, securing regionalized supply. So making sure that we have production, say, in the UK for Luton and our other London area airports, that we have it on the West Coast of the US, but also the Eastern US, also South Central US, where we have concentration of operations. So it can be produced near to where it's consumed and reduce the overall carbon intensity. That's very long-term. Nearer term is pushing what we call book and claim. So that is, if we think SAF is confusing to people, book and claim has proven even more so, because you're saying, well, how did this gallon go onto an aircraft in California, but I get credit for it in New York City? And that has taken some time to get some operators comfortable with that. But that actually is often the most responsible way from an overall carbon impact perspective to produce and consume SAF, because we're able to put it on board aircraft. It gets put into, call it the supply chain, very close to where it's produced, so low carbon intensity, but the person actually burning it doesn't get credit for it. That credit actually goes to someone else who's willing to pay for that premium. So we see book and claim having that. If we could have that at all 200 signature locations for operators like Stanley, we think that could make a very big difference. So there's a learning curve to get over, but also an availability of book and claim in a way that's easy for people to understand. We think that can be kind of the next phase here.
And just Bruce, would you just explain to viewers what book and claim is? Can you do that in a nutshell?
I'll try, Mark. Yes, of course. I mean, book and claim it's actually based on the domestic system where you pay for renewable energy in your house. It actually goes to somebody else's house, but you get the environmental benefit. Book and claim for SAF works in exactly the same way. What you're paying for SAF and the environmental credit, which you can use for your overall CO2 reduction program, although the fuel goes into another aircraft. So the industry's worked very, very hard on making sure that we have the ability to capture the information you need from a CO2 point of view, and that then you can apply it to your overall CO2 reduction program. So it is fairly simple as a concept. In the more technical side with the environmental information is a little bit more difficult, but there has been some work in the industry, as I say, to try and simplify that process. But fundamentally it's a simple way of doing things.
And just Bruce, I get that. Thank you for explaining that. I think what my question would be, when is it just going to become something that we don't even bother trying to explain anymore? It is widely accepted. There are systems, maybe a few, I don't know, where it just can work, because all this complexity makes uptake perhaps a bit slower than it should be.
I think so, and I think it comes back to that fundamental education process, where it's incumbent on us as an industry to help our customers understand how they can get hold of SAF, working with people like Signature to be able to ensure that at the front line, where SAF's available, where book and claim is available, it's made simple for the customer and so on. So I think that as time goes on, the education still remains the fundamental process, but I think as kerosene is the norm now, I think SAF will become the norm as we use it more often. So as it makes its way into the industry, and as Scott said earlier, sort of 2% by 25, 5% by 2030, as that percentage increases, so does the understanding of what it actually is.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks for that explanation. Simon, I'm going to ask you to jump in, a bit like when I asked Marty about how they are, bringing SAF into day-to-day operations. I think at a a blend of 70-30, right, Marty? That's your standard blend at the moment. So yeah, got it. Excellent, thank you. So Simon, but you really are pushing as well hard here on SAF. We were talking about maybe Farnborough at one point even becoming a SAF only airport. Just talk us through your thinking there, Simon, please.
Well, it's all part of strategic priority for the business. We see our sustainability credentials as a key competitive strength alongside the wonderful infrastructure that we have here, and the geographic location to London. So the vision is that people would want to use Farnborough because it's the sustainable thing to do. Now, we're not there today, clearly, but that would be the goal. And the UK government, as people might know, have mandated a 10% SAF blend by the end of the decade, which is a good thing, though. That's going to mean that producers will invest in refining and production of SAF, so price should come down. But I've been challenging my team and saying, well, why don't we bring it in earlier? Why don't we become a SAF-only airport? Now, the issue, of course, with that is, one, we don't know what it will do to demand. So you take a bit of a gamble. But, long term, I think everybody on the panel would agree SAF is a good horse to back in terms of, advancing the sustainability credentials of business aviation before new technology comes in, and we all know the issues with that. Now, we currently offer a 38% blend. And we couldn't get the supply to be a SAF-only airport at that blend, so you'd have to dilute. And even on a diluted blend, I still think we would struggle to be able to secure, 100% replacement with Jet A1. So we're not in that place today, but I would never rule it out. And I think it's just symbolic of our aspirations around sustainability.
No, thank you, Simon. It's and when you say SAF only, of course, you don't mean 100% SAF. You mean whatever the blend is moving to 100%. Yeah. And this is what Marty means as well, is because San Francisco is already effectively 100% SAF. Every bit of Jet A1 is a SAF blend, right, at San Francisco, right, Marty?
Sorry, mute issues. Yes, yeah, correct. But it's a blended gallon, right? The 70-30, as you say, eventually converting it.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's just go to a couple of the questions, and this relates to the sort of the theme that we were progressing here. It's an anonymous, not an anonymous attendee, but the question is, what are the risks that, despite the advancements, governments will react with the restrictions anyway as a quick solution? And this attendee says France recently said it may be looking to ban private jets. So I suppose, what's the sort of reaction to that? Who would like to sort of respond to that? Will it be done to us if we're not careful? Stanley.
Yeah. I think, again, it's like all the panel has been saying. It's a question of education, both the public about what the industry is all about. And what Simon and Marty are doing is excellent in terms of telling their clients, listen, we are backing SAF. This is the way to go. What Scott and Bruce Bombardier and Pratt & Whitney, same thing. But I think more has to be done by the industry to avoid having these kind of conversations as France and Sweden are doing. And just to give you an example, I sit in Malta. It's a small island in the middle of the Mediterranean. We do not have the traffic of either Marty or Simon. Probably in Malta, the traffic of a whole year, Simon gets it in a couple of days. That said, being part of the European Union, of the EU, of the Europe community, things like banning business jets, taxation on fuel, we're not impervious to, we're not immune to. So my reaction to that, and even before this was the talk of the town, DC Aviation were also an FBO in Malta, and last year we decided to offset all the fuel purchased through our company of our clients, so operators competing with us. But we didn't think of it like that. We said, okay, let's offset everything, and it helps creating the conversation. If DC Aviation is doing it in Malta, maybe I should too. Even within my own organization, we start talking to the customer. Why not offset? Why not? You know, if SAF, don't tell me SAF is not available, you can offset, you can book and claim. I'm talking to a fuel supplier to offer SAF from Malta. We're not quite there yet, but hopefully by NBAA or Mace in October, we might be able to be offering SAF out of Malta as an FBO, even though it's not physically possible to offer SAF out of Malta. So yes, I think we will never completely kill the targeting of business aviation, because we're an easy target. We'll always be an easy target. But if we educate and we can demonstrate by numbers, by actions, leading by example, I think the implications, we can reduce the implications, if you like. People will talk about it, but then almost be afraid to take it further, because we can demonstrate that we talk the talk, that we walk the talk, and put money where our mouth is. And I think we are doing. It's just like everybody said, we need to educate more the community, support each other in how to do this, and also not only do it, but make sure that we're seen to be doing it. Because sometimes a lot of people do things. So for example, again, taking our example, we changed all the lighting in our hangars. We buy sustainable electricity in Germany for our hangars. It is another way of being more sustainable, but nobody knows about it. You know what I mean? So I think we need to talk more about the things that we do to convert people, if you like, that we're not the bad boys out there or girls.
No, absolutely. And thank you, Stanley. And I know there's a question about which kind of offsets did you choose, and I know that you did them through the CT Global Carbon Trading Exchange. That's right, isn't it? CTX Global.
CTX, and that was an easy choice, because again, it takes time to find the right one, but IBAC and EBAA and NBAA, did the work for the operators. So all we have to do is, speak to IBAC and take one of the
Thank you.
approved.
Nice bit of promo there for IBAC and EBAA and that work there, Bruce. That's good to hear, wasn't it? One of the questions coming in from Jim Banks is quite an interesting one. He says a low carbon future will not come at cost parity with the fossil carbon present. Isn't this an opportunity for business aviation to simply accept the cost premium and take a leadership role? Who would like to sort of think about that? Marty, thank you.
Yeah, just to weigh in, and I want to give credit to our partners. So we, Jim's right. I think there has to be some first movers that are willing to accept the premium. I think with Bombardier, I think Pratt & Whitney, who we haven't worked with directly, but have watched their leadership in the space, and then certainly NetJets, largest GA fleet operator globally. I'm learning about Stanley's work with DC. It's taking operators like that to say, you know what, there is a premium, but we're willing to accept it. We believe in this. And we're going to be out front. Now, I think this next phase will be very interesting because there is a pretty significant cost parity. And Stanley alluded to the operator's reality, right? Of it is there's a margin you're trying to preserve. We're in business to stay in business, right? So as much as we want to do it sustainably, we have to be rational business people. And that's where, again, I think this collective doing what we can, specifically reading some of the comments, this concern about governments stepping in to sort of regulate us out of business is very real, but where we have partners in governments that are willing to say, look, we believe for the greater good, we want you to stay in business. We see the good that general aviation does globally to keep the planet moving, to keep decision makers moving, right, to make business happen. But we also want to help you do it more sustainably. Things like what we saw in the US with the Inflation Reduction Act, that creates some more opportunity for producers of SAF to do it on parity with other competing products is certainly helpful to us. So I think the more we can determine to lead and have, you know, leadership like we see from this panel, where people are willing to put their money where their mouth is for now, it should improve the price parity. And eventually, I think to your point, Mark, SAF just becomes the way we operate. You know, moving towards carbon neutrality, most of Signature's carbon footprint doesn't come from SAF, scope 1 and 2, because we don't consume it, right? We sell it to our customers. So most is our facilities. What can we do with our energy efficiency products or projects, both in construction and remediation? You know, those are the things that we have to continue to just take a leadership role in. Understand there will be some cost, but that ultimately is the cost of preserving the long-term future for our industry.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. Scott, you come in, and then I can see Simon wants to come in there. So Scott, you go first, please.
Yeah, I just want to feed off what Marty was saying. You know, it's everybody, like I hear all the comments on from my panelists, and you know, I've worked with some of these corporations as we move ahead the agenda, and you know, it does really take that leadership, and it does take working with those that are willing to take the risk and to pay the premium. And you know, as we talk to some of our operators out there, I want to thank them for their leadership. There's an awful lot of interest in understanding SAF. I think it was Stanley you talked about, or sorry, I think Marty you talked about then how it's as a pilot you're taught that fuel is your precious resource, and you manage it very closely. So it is about that education with each and every one of the operators. And you know, we offer a carbon offset service as well, and we have an awful lot of customers that are interested in talking to us about that. So I think the momentum's growing, but Marty, I think you nailed it. That this next phase, we've got the early adopters that are out there. The next phase is where we really collectively need to make the push to educate and to make sure that that they understand that, you know, we have to do it ourselves or it'll be done to us. So, you know, it's better the former than the latter.
Nicely put, Scott. Thank you for that that piece. Simon.
Yeah, no, I mean, Scott's actually said what I was going to say. You know, it's obviously a very real threat, punitive government regulation of our industry, and if it gets to that point, we've missed the opportunity. No, we have a tremendous opportunity to lead in aviation on this front. And it's about coming together, the collaboration, galvanizing thinking, and actually making things happen. You know, we talk a lot, we do a lot of talking, and we convince ourselves that we're communicating, but we need action, and we need to. It needs to be from within the industry rather than imposed upon us.
Well, yeah, well said there, Simon. And Bruce, you know, you worked with in the EBA. You talked to lots of people in the Commission and obviously ICAO and other bodies. Are you successful at getting the message across, do you think? Or have you been in the past?
I think, yeah, I mean, with it, yes, I think we have, but I think there's lots more work to do. I mean, we, you know, as an OEM, we, you know, going back to the original question, we do understand that there's a premium to do these sorts of things, and we use SAF in our testing flights, our delivery flights to our customers, and our proving flights as well. So it, you know, we understand that there's that premium, but we also, you know, it also helps us to educate our customers, because we explain that the aircraft has that you know, that element within it and that capability. But going back, you know, as part two of your question there, with the, you know, with you know, people like the European Union and so on and so forth. Yes, there is, you know, there is a need to continue to educate. We do have some, you know, there are specific departments within the union that deal with aviation who do understand it better than perhaps their colleagues do. You know, so that education needs to widen, and I think sometimes we need to widen that education beyond the industry as well.
Well, we're getting towards the end, and you know, it's been a great discussion already. There are a few. I think we've answered a lot of the questions, and I hope the panelists will agree as you've been looking at them as well. There's a really interesting one at the bottom. I do like air finance, but from Wouter de Pries. about green financing. We won't go down that one. Maybe we'll do a specific webinar on that one, Wouter. So do get in touch because I'd like to talk to you about that. So before I finish, I'm just going to ask each of the panelists just to tell us, in a 30-second nutshell, please. What is your timeline about the next phase? What in 1 or 2 years, where would you like, if we're having this discussion again, where would you like to be? What would you like to see? Where would you like to be? Let's start with you, Scott.
Sure. I think, where we'd like to be is we plan to do our hybrid electric first flight in 2024. And, how those technologies begin to map across onto the various segments is going to be very critical to us, depending on the outcome of some of our demonstrations. I think that's one place where we're aiming to be, not just where we'd like to be. That's where we're aiming to be, and I think we're going to be in a different place from a SAF viewpoint as well. We should be embarking upon understanding what 100% SAF looks like in our engines. And again, I said engines are generally agnostic, so I don't expect major changes needed, but nonetheless, the work has got to get done. And then, I think working with the industry, as we've been talking around the table here, and understanding what we collectively can do in order to get to that next phase momentum of adoption of the various practices that are already in place, and such that we are focusing on the now and not just the future too.
Stanley, what's your thought? Where would you like to be a couple of years' time?
I think in a couple of years' time, I would love that a significant chunk, if not all, of our customers or aircraft owners are using SAF as a matter of fact. Same goes probably, although again, like I said, Malta as an island is a little bit more complicated. So from an FBO perspective, it might be difficult in 2 years' time still having SAF in Malta as a physical SAF, but I hope that at least a significant amount of our clients will be using SAF through a book and claim kind of system out of Malta, like as a matter of fact as well. And maybe slightly more ambitious that our collaboration with Hydroplane will actually be doing flight testing.
We look forward to coming to the first flight, Stanley. How about that? We'll come and see that in action. Simon, what about you? Thank you, Stanley, very much.
Yeah, I think simply that we would have access to enough supplier SAF to make a meaningful difference. Today we don't. In 2 years' time, I hope that will be the case. And, we will do everything we can to, aggressively market and sell SAF. And I wouldn't rule out, making it mandatory in some shape or form if you use Farnborough Airport. But without the supply, we can't make any commitments like that. So yeah, fingers crossed we can all come together. I think the UK government's initiative around mandating SAF blend is a good one. Because that's going to force investment, and we're right behind it.
No, well said. Thank you, Simon. That's a good update. Marty.
Sure. I'd say a couple of years, SAF at 100% of signatures, 200 global FBOs. So whether it's book and claim or physical, I think supported by what Simon just alluded to, additional government support, not regulation, right, but support of what our industry is trying to put forward to the benefit of everyone. And I think for us, as I mentioned, the majority of our emissions, when we think about our sustainability, is actually our facilities and to a lesser extent, our equipment. So we're doing drastic electrification, moving to biodiesel on our 3,000 motorized pieces of equipment globally. And then our facilities in particular, looking to drastically reduce that footprint with the hope of trying to get to carbon neutrality for all of Signature's scope 1 and 2 by 2030. So a lot of work to do on that, but we're very ambitious, aggressive, and can continue to make that investment.
Well, that's very interesting. Thank you, Marty. And the final word goes to you, Bruce, on this one.
That's very kind of you. Thanks, thanks, Mark. I just think, you know, the word that comes to mind is progress. Progress on the use of SAF, progress on education, progress on collaboration, progress on technology development. If we can make strides in the next couple of years on all of those things, I think we're heading in the right direction.
Well, thank you, Bruce. Thanks for those closing words. And I think, you know, we've got there was a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of discussion here. E-base, we saw progress. NBAA last year, we saw more. There'll be more at NBAA this year. And you know, all of this progress, all of this discussion is critical. What we do need, of course, is operators to buy it. We need Pratt & Whitney and other to produce the tech. This is key. Nothing's going to happen if we don't have supply of SAF, if we don't have technology that works. You know, Bruce and Scott have talked about that. So, you know, this is happening. We all want it to be faster. Everybody on this call does, because this is integral to your business futures and your business strategies. Understood. Thank you, everybody, for your great contributions. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you to the audience. We did answer a lot of the questions. I hope you found that very valuable. Obviously, thank you to our sponsor, Pratt & Whitney, for your continuing support here. Very much appreciated. Of course, it helps this all work. This webinar will be available on demand shortly, next couple of days. Our next webinar on sustainability is later in this year, in December, so do look out for that. Again, thank you to everybody for your contributions. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. I wish you all a very good day wherever you are in the world, and goodbye from me until next time. Thank you very much.